to The Writer's Dream. This is a show about writers and authors and their unique stories. And we're here today to welcome Bernadette Walsh, who is the author of The House on Prospect Street, The Gold Coast Wives, and also her newest series, which is called The Devlin Legacy. Her newest book is called Devil's Mountain. And these are all ebooks, and she's going to talk to you today about her books. So welcome.
Well,
Bernadette.
thanks so much for having me, Karen. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you're here. So tell us about your books and why you chose ebooks, and also which is your first book which was the first book that you wrote?
Well, I started writing probably in 2009. I'm a lawyer by training. I've been practicing law for 20 years. And it was always my dream to become a writer. But I always thought of it as something, maybe when I retire or I win the lottery and can, sit on the beach and write my books. And so when I hit 40, I realized that I wasn't probably going to win that lottery ticket. But I still wanted to write. So I started, just going on the internet, taking out books, learning about writing, and I started looking at the blank page, and lo and behold, nothing happened. So I continued researching, and I came up with the snowflake method. I don't know if it's for beginner writers. You basically write a bio of each character. And I had come up with this character, Kate Ryan, who was like me, over 40. She was a lawyer.
You write what you know.
You write what you know. She lived on Long Island, and she was a mom. And so I wrote her biography, and I wrote her all her family members. And I started writing, and I wrote from the first person, because when I tried from the third person, it came out
It's a little harder.
Very stale, and also it was almost like legalese, because that's my comfort zone, right? So it was very factual, but it wasn't much of a novel. So I needed to kind of get in touch with the characters' emotions, and I found that it was easier to do that from the first person. So my first book, Gold Coast Wives, was a light, airy, contemporary romance. And so I sent it out. As soon as I hit the end, I did what every beginner writer does. I sent it out to 100 agents.
Yeah, we all do that.
Yes, and of course it was not ready to be seen by anyone, never mind an agent. So I joined a writing group, the Long Island Romance Writers, and I learned that I'd made about 100 beginner mistakes. So I rewrote it. I entered it in some contests, because the Romance Writers of America have these local contests that you can enter.
Is this a national organization?
Yes, I belong to the Long Island chapter, but the Romance Writers of America is a national chapter. So,
and your books are romance type of books?
Yeah, I would say they're women's fiction with romantic elements, probably more so than a traditional romance. So I've done a lot of work on it. I actually started placing, I rewrote it a lot, and I started placing and winning a few contests. But then I put it aside. I said, you know what, I'm going to treat this as my beginner, learning experience. And I had learned a lot. Just like creating something out of nothing is really amazing. So
even characters,
and everything else.
That's a tough thing to do.
So so then I started my second book. So I put it aside, and I started my second book, and I had been to a family reunion, and one of my father's cousins had brought to the family reunion all these letters from our great-grandmother from Ireland. And I started reading through them. She had written one letter to her daughter here, who was living in New York, and this is in the 30s, who had, her husband had died. She left her with 2 young children. And the pain, that came through, not only what her daughter was going through, but the fact that she couldn't call her up on the phone, she couldn't see her. She was, at that time, people didn't travel back and forth. So her only way to comfort her was through that letter. And so I thought about, what would happen if you were here in America at that time without a family, and maybe you made some choices that were not really that great.
Was that the inspiration behind the House on Prospect?
Yes, the House on Prospect. Yeah. So it's really about 3 generations of women, and the first woman, Kitty, was in America, and she married someone maybe she shouldn't have, and she did a couple of things she shouldn't have, and those the ramifications of her decisions kind of trickled down the generations. So this is a much more serious novel, and so it's her daughter Rose and her granddaughter Ellen are in the House of Prospect, and Ellen is a lawyer, which whose mother Rose is dying, and it's at the last 2 months of her life. though they had been estranged, a lot of secrets percolate. And so it's a much more serious book. There's some lighter moments, and there's also some romantic elements.
I liked reading the first chapter, so I'm going to read it.
But I think I learned in House on Prospect how to really dig into the characters.
That's so important.
It
the
is.
Connection to the characters for your readers is what makes them want to keep reading it.
So I think House on Prospect, again, I think as a writer, you're always learning with each work.
Yes.
So I learned how to dig and make the characters a little deeper. So then I went back to Gold Coast Wives and used what I'd learned, and I rewrote it again. And made her struggle, which was Kate Ryan, our lawyer from Long Island, who had lost her husband. Her husband left her, and she lost her job, and she had nothing left. And she joined a cable TV show, kind of like a schlocky version of The Real Housewives. So again, I kept the funny elements, but I made her a little bit deeper. And so I sent this out to some e-publishers.
Yeah, why e-pub? Why not? Why did you choose e-publishing instead of print?
Well, because I didn't want to self-publish. I wanted the benefits of being with a publisher, to do the covers, to do the editing, to take care of all the business aspect of it, because I have a full-time job and I'm a mother, and this is my sideline. And so I wanted to focus on creating great books and not on all the other stuff that goes with creating good books. So
it's very time consuming.
Yes, and so so I submitted to some e-publishers, and Lyrical Press gave me a really great Christmas present in 2010. They gave me an acceptance letter. So
isn't that a great feeling?
Yes, it was amazing, and they have been so great to work with. Like I said, each one of my books with Lyrical has gone through several, iterations of very detailed edits. So they published this book. They were not interested in House on Prospect because there was not enough of a romance element, and they really do romance. So, so I found another e-publisher, Echelon Press, which was also a very positive experience. And then, so those came out. This came out in November 2011. This came out in January, on my birthday.
January
Did
they also offer print if you wanted it? Did those?
No,
publishers?
this does not offer prints. Lyrical is opening it up to print, but it has to reach a certain level of sales, and I haven't reached that yet. So then, after I'd kind of learned gone through these books, I started my third book, which was originally supposed to be, again, more of a women's fiction book about two generations of women, one in Ireland, one living in New York. And I originally wanted my main character to have schizophrenia. I wanted her to be crazy, and she thought she was a witch and thought she had all these powers. But I had so much fun writing the paranormal kind of elements that I decided to switch gears, and I made her really be a witch, and so she wasn't crazy. Although, like, sometimes
did you have
in the
to
book,
do a lot of research?
No, I really didn't do that much research about because I said Devil's Mountain in Ireland. Actually, all of my books, even though I've kind of hopped around genres, they all have some unifying themes. They're generally about women in midlife dealing with a crisis, losing your husband. Your mother is estranged and she's dying. So that's one theme. The other is it often deals with mothers and daughters and those difficult, very wonderful relationships, but sometimes difficult relationships.
And all of us as mothers can identify with that.
Yes. And then I think the other unifying theme is I write either about Ireland or Irish Americans. And,
Is there a lot of family there?
Yes, my husband's from Ireland. My mother's Irish born. My father's family is Irish, so I am Irish. I'm 100% green.
Any of the settings taken from there, or did you just, as far as your plot and settings of the book?
Well, I set these two in Long Island. And so I dealt with, Irish Americans. Devil's Mountain is set actually I set it in Kerry, but it's based on a house that my parents used to own in Limerick, which is where my mother's from. And it was a really beautiful place. They don't have it anymore, but it was very remote, and it was very otherworldly. So when I was writing about Devil's Mountain, I was thinking of that place. And so I think, one of the reasons why I use Irish America is because it's very accessible to me. I don't know if you're familiar with Alice McDermott, but she's another writer who focuses on, she's from Long Island, and she focuses on Irish America. And one of the reasons she said that she does this is because it is most accessible to her.
Right.
And so she didn't need to do a lot of research.
Going back to writing what you know.
Writing what you know. She said, I know Irish American people. I know what
Right.
their houses look like. I
Right.
know what they have for dinner. And
Yeah.
I know how they turn a phrase.
Yeah.
And she said that freed her up to really, because the outside she knew.
Right.
So it freed her up to focus on what was important, which was the inner development of the character.
Right.
And that's exactly why I do it as well.
Right.
So I can get the outside right. I write about places that I know very, very well, where I've grown up or where
Yeah.
I've been, spent some time.
Yeah.
And I write about, things that I know very
That are
well.
familiar to you.
And then I can focus on the crazy stuff, which is making them into witches.
That makes it-
and
that-
going on
that's
TV
fun.
and all that stuff. Yeah.
How do you have time to write? I know you're a mother, and you have a child, and you very busy life with your you're working full time. So where do you fit it all in to write?
Well, I guess I really don't have time, but you have to make the time if it's something you want to do. And I
Something
just
you
felt
love.
called to do it. Life is short. I think again it was like turning 40 and saying, I want to achieve everything I can achieve.
Right.
And so, you make the time. I don't have big blocks of time to write, and I think so it makes me be very focused. So if I get 15 minutes, I may get a paragraph. But you know what? It's a
Okay.
paragraph more than I had the day before.
Do you find that you will write in the morning or in the evening?
I write whenever
or
I have
whenever
time.
you
I
have-
also have a long commute.
Okay.
I commute from Long Island
see.
into the city.
So you take the railroad in?
Yeah, I take the railroad in, which is nice. I mean, it's kind of hard to block out, all the people on their cell phones, but but I do. And so, if I take my daughter to dance class, I'll bring my computer. And so while she's dancing, I'm typing away.
Okay.
And I just do a little bit at a time. And I think what helps is because I have the legal background, I'm used to working under pressure.
The deadlines.
So,
yeah.
I'm used to working with words. So I just I just focus and I get it out there.
Yeah, that's good. You have a lot of willpower to keep the distractions out because some
You
people
have
have a
to,
hard
yeah.
time. Did you ever have writer's block? Did you ever experience that?
Well, I've written 5 books in, was it 3 years? So I haven't really
Will be
experienced
nice.
it yet.
That's good.
But I'm sure I will at some point.
Okay. Was it easier after the first book to write the others? Do you find, and which is your favorite book and why?
I definitely think it was easier. I mean, Gold Coast Wives, again, went through so many rewrites. The others did need to do that because I
Right.
kind of learned and knew my way. It's kind of like, saying which is your favorite child to a mother, right? I love them all. This because my learning experience, this because there was so much family history that I incorporated in House and Prospect. But I have to say, I think writing-wise, my favorite books are the Devlin Legacy. Now,
Yeah, that sounds
Devil's
wonderful.
Mountain
I
is
can't wait to get that book.
yeah, it's a really cool book.
Yeah.
It sounds a little crazy
Sounds
when
a-
you describe it,
yeah.
but Devil's Mountain is the first in the series. Lyrical has contracted the other 2. So Devil's Shore, which is set on the South Shore of Long Island for the most part, will be out in December, and I
Okay.
just finished those edits. And then Devil's Daughter, which is set primarily back on the mountain, back in Ireland, will be out sometime in 2013.
Okay.
And I thought originally it would just be a trilogy, but I just can't get away from these women. They just fascinate me so. So
Yeah,
I'm still,
it does sound fascinating. The first one, I didn't get a chance to
there's a lot you can do with it.
read too much of it, but I really it sounds very fascinating.
So, so the book I'm working on right now, called The Devlin Witch, is now book 4 of that series. So I'm in the
Okay.
middle of that right now.
Okay. Did you have ideas come to you at different odd times of the day, like all of a sudden in the middle of the night? Sometimes I would wake up and I'd get a great idea and I'd have a pad and a pen at my night table and I'd have to write it down or I'd forget it by morning.
Right.
Did anything like that happen to you?
No, I think I focus more on the character. It's the character, like the main character that kind of comes to me.
Yeah.
And like I said, I have that long commute. So sometimes I just zone out and look
Yeah.
out the window and I allow her to kind of tell me her story. And then of course, I think a book is going in one direction, right? She has schizophrenia, and then it goes in another direction, she's really a witch. So sometimes I'm a bit of a pantser in that sense. I
Okay.
just kind of go with the flow.
How about marketing and promoting? Linda Frank and I, who are both authors, we realized after our experience after writing our books, we've learned an awful lot, and we learned that marketing and promoting is probably the single most important thing you can do to get the word out there about your book. What do you do?
Well, that's been a challenge, definitely, and that's one of the the downsides of being with a smaller publisher. I mean, like I said, I think both Lyrical and Echelon did a great job of creating a great product, but they just don't have the resources that a traditional publisher has.
So it's up to you.
So it's up to me.
Even traditional publishing, you still have to get out there, I think.
So I focus, because these are ebooks, I focused on doing blog tours, getting reviews that way. I've become active on Goodreads, which is really neat because you can see who is adding your books.
Right.
And so I had recently somebody from the Philippines read the House on Prospect, which is really
that's great.
Yeah, really amazing. And I think that's the benefits of being available electronically. You're available worldwide.
That's right.
So, but then the challenge is getting people to know you exist. So I'm still struggling with that. I've experimented a little bit. I've done some ads with Goodreads. I've done some Facebook ads. I did a print ad.
You have a website and you
I
have
have
a
a
Facebook
website.
page.
I have a Facebook fan page. I'm on Twitter, B Walsh Writer.
All the
so I've
social
done,
media.
so I've done some of the social media. But again, I would much rather spend my free time, the little that I have, writing.
Yes.
And so
that's the fun part.
That's the fun part. And so this summer, actually, it's impacted my writing because I've really been trying to focus more. So I just finished up a blog tour. I'm starting another blog tour for Devil's Mountain in September. So that's how, hopefully I can get the word out. And doing things like this.
Yeah,
So.
that's right. That's all you have to do. How is the writing very different from your day job, would you find?
Well, it's much more creative, which I think is great because I don't have a whole lot of creative outlook, ability to express myself creatively. People don't usually want that in their lawyers. So,
Yes.
so I think being a lawyer has helped me, like I said, because I can write quickly. I have a good command of the English language, and I'm also very open to edits. There's some writers, I think, in the editing process, they're so protective of all their language. But because I've been a lawyer for 20 years, I'm used to people editing my work,
Right.
So I send things out for comments, I get comments back. So the editing process is very much like my day job in that sense.
Okay.
But I mean, being able to write, it's just been a joy. It's really added such a dimension to my life. And, because it's no one else can tell my stories except for me.
Right.
And there are very few areas in your life that are like that, right? Because another lawyer could probably
And
do it
nobody
on,
can tell a story the way everybody tells a different story.
Right.
I know.
So, and I have made my writing very personal too. Not that I write about myself all the time, but I put a lot of my own emotions in there.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and when you develop your characters, I know with me, it helped me to develop some of my characters thinking about my own family members. Like my brother, for instance, is very much the character in my book, who's one of the main characters, is very much like my brother, Mickey. So I think that helps too.
I actually read an article recently. It was in the New Yorker from a writer, and he said, I think I actually have it here. He said, if I don't break my own heart in the writing of a book, then I know I've done it wrong. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I know what it feels like.
Yes.
And that is definitely my experience, because the first draft of Gold Coast Wives, I wasn't breaking my own heart. It was very flat.
Yeah.
But in House of Prospect, I think that's where I learned how to really put my heart into my book.
And I can see that even in the first chapter. I really wanted to get to know more about the daughter and the mom, and you can see their personalities were very different. Yeah.
And in talking about my writing process, I mean, in some ways it's kind of mysterious because how do I do it? I don't know. Like it just, I kind of get into a zone. And,
yes, people always ask me that too. How did you write all this? How did you do this? You get into the zone and you just let a flow go.
That's exactly right. So.
How much research did you have to do? I know you probably had to do a lot of research on Devil's Mountain. How much research did you have to do?
I didn't do any research. I did a little bit of research. I actually went to, for Devil's Mountain, the witchcraft side of it is more muted. It's not, it's not the primary. It's really in the second and third book that I get more into that. So I didn't do a whole lot of research. Again, I wrote about a locale where I was very familiar. It was my parents' summer home. But for the other two books, because I was bringing in more of the witchcraft elements, I actually went to the Long Island Witches Festival and I dragged my sister with me. It was wild. It was in Smithtown, so I got some books, and I talked to some witches, and they were kind of fun. They were kind of normal people. They certainly didn't look like witches. So I did some of that research.
Which we think of in fairy tales.
Yes,
now.
but I really, I focused on creating my own world. So I took little elements, I sprinkled it through, but that was really it. That was really it.
Yes.
I used some Irish words in Devil's Mountain, and I'm sure if my husband hasn't read it, believe it or not. So
he hasn't read it yet?
Yeah, he hasn't read it.
That's because it's brand new.
No, I think also he's not really a romance, as most men are not romance readers.
My husband either.
But so I should have had him check some of the Irish words, but then I didn't really want his input, so I just went on on Google and I picked out some words. And again, I just wanted to sprinkle it for a flavor. You know.
Right.
It's really the characters and their story that's more important.
Exactly. What is the most important thing you want to tell your readers about your books? What would you like to say about your books? Most important aspect.
The most important aspect. They'll break your heart a little bit. They're all a little bit sad. I mean, even the funny one is a little bit sad.
Okay.
But hopefully it will transport you to a different world.
Which is the character that you associate yourself with in your books? Which is the one that you like the best of yourself in your books?
I think the character that's closest to at least my outward life is probably Kate Ryan in Gold Coast Wives.
Okay.
I think in terms of the inner life, I think Ellen from House on Prospect, although she's full of angst, I put a lot of my angst into her.
Okay.
And then I think Orla, who is actually not in Devil's Mountain, she's in Devil's Shore, which will be coming out. She's my favorite character because she's really she's the one who really embraces her witchiness, and she's really kick-ass. So I think she's a really great character. I don't know if I would associate. I kind of put all the things I'd like to be into Orla.
Some people do that.
Yeah, which is fun.
In House on Prospect, is there any similarities between the mother who has cancer and then her daughter? Any similarities to your background at all in relationships?
Well, when I started this book, my father had lost 3 of his sisters. He's the youngest in the family. So each year he'd lost a sister. So I think that's why I was kind of thinking a little bit about end-of-life issues.
Okay.
And when Rose was put in hospice, my Aunt Dorothy was in hospice. And so I went to visit her, and I kind of took some of that experience, the awkwardness that people feel when they come and visit someone at the end of their life. Like, what do you say? Especially if you're not entirely all that close, and we weren't that close. But so I put some of that into it.
Right.
Again, I took an actual letter from my great-grandmother and included that in the book. I manipulated it a little bit, but so. I'm very lucky that my parents are both still with me. So, so it was more like, extended family as opposed to immediate family.
Okay. Oprah has famously said that there's no such, I'm going to quote this, such thing as luck without preparation and a moment of opportunity. Do you agree with this or disagree? And tell us why.
Well, I guess you have to agree with that statement, right? Because if you haven't, from a writer, if you haven't done the work to create a good book, then, somebody can put you on Oprah, but you're not going to get very good reviews, right? But on the other hand, you can write a great book, and I think I've written, with the help from my publishers, some really interesting books. It may find an audience, it may not. It's very difficult in this crowded marketplace to stand out.
Yes. So many writers.
So yeah, I guess I would agree with that. I certainly hope that if Oprah wants to interview me now that I've gotten this experience, I'm certainly open.
I was going to ask you if you had any opportunities like that yet, to be on a talk show or a radio show yet.
No, not. This has been my first opportunity. So
I'm glad you're here. So tell us, what are your plans for the future? And I know you have a few other books. One other book coming out, 2 books coming out actually, right? The last 2 in the series of the Devlin's legacy?
Yes, I have Devil's Shore with my favorite character, Orla, is coming out in December. And again, that's available through Amazon, Kindle, the Nook. Right now, all my books are just e-books only. And then the 3rd book, Devil's Daughter, we just finished up Devil's Shore, so I'll probably start working with my editor on Devil's Daughter. I would probably next month or so. And then I'm also trying to write The Devlin Witch, which is now going to be the 4th book in this series. I think after that, I hopefully will be done with the witches, and I want to turn on to something new.
Something different.
So I'll probably go back to, I have some ideas that I'm thinking about for more of a traditional women's fiction book.
Okay.
But they'll always have a little bit of romance, because, I mean, romance is what makes life fun,
yeah,
right?
Oh, I enjoy romance books. With the ebook publishing, how did you get out onto all the sites? There's so many of them now, as far as Kindle and Nook. Are you on others as well as Kindle and Nook?
I'm on Kobo. I'm on some crazy one that's available in India. I'm on a whole bunch of them.
Okay.
I think my publisher goes through Overdrive,
Okay.
which I think then gets it out. But that's one of the benefits of using a publisher as opposed to just being self-published.
Right.
So I don't have to think about
They
that.
can help you
She
with all of
uploads the files. They format everything, and I just get a royalty statement. So.
Okay. And how about the editing of all your books? Did you get help from them with that, or did you hire somebody on your own?
No, I didn't. Obviously I tried to give them the best book I could, but then the editor kind of took over. So I had a content editor and a line editor. And I probably, for all of my lyrical books, I probably went through 5 rounds of edits with my content editor.
Okay.
And then after she was done, we'd get a line editor who did the real nitty-gritty.
Okay.
And even, like I said, my editor would say, your drafts are pretty clean, because I'm a writer, so because I'm a lawyer, so I'm used to having the correct grammar. But still, they polish it up really nicely.
Okay.
So that's, like I said, I think that's, for me, that is worth going through a publisher, and I'm happy to share my earnings with them.
That's great. So what else would you like to share as far as any accomplishments that you'd like to share with us with your books? Any awards, anything that you...
I think for House on Prospect and Gold Coast Wives, before they were published, I did win a couple of local romance writers awards.
Through which organizations?
The Wisconsin Romance Writers, the Tampa Romance Writers, I think a few others.
Okay.
So we'll see. Hopefully there'll be some new awards coming my way.
I'm sure there will be. They sound great, and I'm looking forward to reading the full Devil's Mountain and also finishing this one.
Okay.
Thank you for being with us,
Thank you so
Bernadette.
much.
It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much.